I started my psychiatric rotation on a rainy Monday in October. The kind of rain that doesn't pour but just clings to everything, like mildew on tile grout. The hospital was a 1970s monolith of brutalist concrete, wedged between an abandoned community college and a shuttered juvenile detention center. State-funded, chronically understaffed, and visibly decaying. On my first day, the supervising doctor, Dr. Lehman, handed me a laminated floor plan. "Don't go into Ward 6B unless you're assigned," he said. I blinked at the diagram. There was number 6B. "Sorry, 6B?" He gave a thin smile and waved me off. "Just an old internal reference. Ignore it," I tried. But by the end of the first week, 6B came up again in a patient's record. Her name was Miranda H., female, 38, schizophrenia diagnosis. Notes indicated she was currently in Ward 6B, long-term stabilization. This was strange, because I'd just seen her name on the discharge list from 2021, thinking it was a clerical mistake. I asked the records clerk, a nervous man who always smelled like microwave fish, if he could double-check. He tapped away on his old desktop for a moment, then frowned. System says she's still active. Look." He turned the monitor toward me. "Miranda H. assigned bed, 6B03, meds, clozapine, lorazepam, risperidone. But that ward doesn't," I paused. Never mind. That night I couldn't stop thinking about it. Maybe it was a leftover data entry. Maybe there was a Ward 6B, temporarily closed, and the system just hadn't updated. Bureaucratic ghosts. Still, something felt off. I spent the next few days pretending I'd let it go. I made my rounds, sat in on group therapy, wrote up dull medication reports, the usual. But every time I passed the hallway between wards 6A and 7, I noticed the same thing. A cluster of old laundry carts parked diagonally against a wall, always just to the left of the supply closet. One afternoon I caught a glimpse of something behind them, a door, metal, unlabeled, faded green paint, the kind of door that didn't want attention. That night I pulled up the hospital's digital archive. Buried in a decades-old facilities PDF was a reference to Ward 6B, listed as low-stimulation long-term housing, 1,974 1,986. After that, it was just redacted entries and blank spaces in the directory. Why would a ward be decommissioned and never removed from records? I asked Dr. Lehman again, casually. "You're still curious about that?" He didn't look up from his sandwich. "We don't use it. The state changed the protocol. Different times. But Miranda H. There's no patient by that name currently under our care," he interrupted. That was a lie. I'd seen her name again that morning, listed on a restricted medication log with a fresh date. I decided to check for myself. The hallway was quiet at night. After evening rounds, I doubled back with a cart of used gowns to avoid suspicion. The door was heavier than I expected. No keycard reader, just an old bolt lock. But it was open. Inside was a narrow corridor. The overhead lights flickered inconsistently, like they weren't sure whether they still worked. The air was wrong, stagnant, dry, but faintly sweet, like iron or rust. I passed 3 closed doors, each with a narrow, fogged-over window. No names, no numbers, no sound. Just as I was about to turn back, I heard something, a soft, dragging sound. Then a light shuffle, like someone repositioning in bed. followed by a voice, faint, unsure. "Is it still Tuesday?" I froze. There was someone in one of the rooms. I waited, silence again. Then the voice, whispering now, almost mechanical. "They said I wasn't here, but I'm still here." I returned to the corridor after that unsettling encounter. The faint, mechanical whisper, "Is it still Tuesday?" echoed in my mind as I tiptoed back to the door I had discovered. I couldn't allow myself to ignore it any longer. I slipped back into the deserted wing and found the room from which the voice had emanated. The door, once shut, now sat ajar, revealing only a darkened interior. I pushed it open carefully. Inside, the room was sparse, barren of furniture except for a single rough cot and a dusty metal locker. The window, cracked and fogged, offered a view of a forgotten courtyard overgrown with weeds. No sign of anyone or anything was immediately apparent. I drew nearer to the cot, hesitant, as if my presence might disturb something long dormant. Scrawled on the underside of the cot's bed frame was a date, March 16th, 1982. My pulse quickened. This room must have been closed off decades ago, yet something felt disturbingly current. I slowly lifted a corner of a tattered blanket. Underneath, a small notebook lay wedged, its pages yellowed with age yet marked in a neat, confident script. I flipped through it. The entries were like confessions, clinical observations interwoven with personal accounts of odd occurrences. The writer, a resident psychiatrist who had worked in Ward 6B back in the early 80s, described patients who vanished from sight, inexplicable medication errors, and voices that whispered unspeakable things during night rounds. His final entry read, "They said the ward closed in '86. They said it was for our protection, but they never cleaned out the darkness." A chill crawled over me. Suddenly, I recalled the name. Miranda H. The notebook contained an entry about a patient who had been disappeared from the official files, yet continued to be referenced in medication logs. Was it possible that Ward 6B, though long abandoned, continued to exert its influence through the data? That the bureaucratic system, in its inertia, kept an echo of the past alive? My heart pounded as I left the room. I retraced my steps through the silent corridor, my mind reeling with the implications of the notebook. Outside, the hallway's fluorescent lights hummed softly, indifferent to the secrets they illuminated. I resolved then to confront Dr. Lehman with the evidence, but the next morning, before I could reach him, I found his office empty and the hospital floors eerily quiet. During the day, I searched the files in the records room. Behind layers of anonymized data and redacted reports, I uncovered a series of memos discussing anomalies in patient care and unexplained medication dispensation that spanned several decades. Every document, every internal memo hinted at a slow-burning scandal, a system so entangled in its own legacy that the ghost of Ward 6B refused to die. That night, as I sat alone in my small room in the hospital dormitory, the previous whispers returned, this time clearer, as if trying to warn me, "It's not over." The weight of unreconciled truth pressed on me. I realized that the corruption I had uncovered might not be merely administrative error, but a deliberate cover-up. I didn't sleep that night. I scribbled in my own journal, recording every detail, every twist of hallway, every memory of the mysterious voice. Whether I was unraveling the truth or descending further into a state of paranoid isolation, I couldn't tell. The lines between reality and my own creeping dread blurred. In the cold light of dawn, I left the building with the notebook clutched tight, knowing that I held in my hands evidence of a secret that the institution had long tried to bury. Yet even as I stepped away, I couldn't shake the sensation that I was being followed by the silence of Ward 6B, that somewhere, hidden in the depths of this decaying facility, the whispers of past patients and lost souls would continue echoing, waiting for another to dare question the truth. The unanswered questions remained gnawing at my mind. Was it merely an administrative error perpetuating the memory of a long-gone ward, or had the very structures of power within the hospital become complicit in a decades-long charade? I still haven't found the answers. All I am now is the weight of those unresolved mysteries and a lingering fear that the darkness of Ward 6B will someday claim another voice. I started working at the hospital about 8 months ago. They hired me quickly. Someone on staff had gone on extended leave, and they needed a young psychologist with a degree and no questions. That was me. At the time, psychiatry seemed straightforward. Relapses, meds, stabilizations. A system you could keep track of. I spent my 3rd week reviewing old intake files. It was tedious, cross-referencing diagnoses, verifying meds, sorting documents by disorder type. Most patients were repeat admissions, some with 10 or more stays. One file caught my eye, not because of the name, but the face. There was something deeply familiar about it. Broad cheekbones, narrow eyes, a slightly crooked nose. The photo was low res as usual, but something felt off. At first, I thought it was just a resemblance, but then I opened another file from a different year, October, I think, and there it was again. A different name, different background, slightly different diagnosis, but that same strained expression, same face. I started setting them aside. After a few days, I had 6 folders, all different names, all different histories, but the same man, or maybe similar men. The pictures were blurry enough that doubt stayed in the background, but never completely left. I checked the admission dates. None overlapped. Each time the patient would be released, and 1 or 2 weeks later, a new person would arrive showing similar symptoms. Same ward, same age range, always alone, no emergency contact listed. I asked one of the senior nurses if she remembered a patient named Voronyuk. She frowned and said no. I handed her the file. She glanced at the photo and paused. "Looks familiar," she said. Could have been from another hospital. But she didn't sound sure. I tried to pull up the images on my computer to compare them. They distorted every time I zoomed in, just pixel smears. The photos were scanned poorly, or maybe intentionally degraded. The original image files were only accessible through a separate archive system used by Ward 4, the long-term stabilization unit, the quiet ward, as they called it. I started getting headaches. I couldn't stop thinking about those files. Why didn't anyone else notice? How can someone be admitted under different identities again and again with no one catching it? Each record had physician signatures, but many of the doctors had left the hospital. One psychiatrist, Dr. Dirish, was listed on 3 of the forms. I searched for her in the staff directory. The profile was empty, just a name, 1 photo, blurry. By Friday, I was questioning whether any of this had happened the way I remembered it. The folders seemed too clean. The paper was wider than the rest, newer, but the dates said 2018, 2020, 2021. The more I looked, the more it felt like I'd fallen into something already in motion, something I wasn't supposed to find. Then I saw him, in real life. It was early morning, and I was walking past the observation hallway that faced the patient interview rooms, a mirrored wall, standard design. I glanced into one room without thinking and froze. A man sat at the table, hands folded, staring at the blank wall like he was waiting for something. He turned his head. I didn't recognize him at first, not right away, but when he looked up, I knew it was the face. The same face from all the photos, not similar. The exact same one. He didn't acknowledge me after that first glance, just stared past the wall, the way heavily medicated patients do, but his chart said nothing about sedation, no active medications, no recorded intake, no name either. When I checked the schedule, room B3 was marked vacant. I went back to the staff station and asked quietly if anyone had seen a new patient admitted that morning. The nurse on duty shrugged. "We're at capacity." "No one's come in since yesterday." I wanted to press, but I felt ridiculous. What would I even say? Instead, I waited until lunch, then logged into the record system. I used the credentials of a resident who rarely changed their password. Navigating through the back end took time. The database was old and painfully slow. When I finally accessed the photo archive from Ward 4, I typed in a range of random patient numbers. Most were blank. Others had corrupted previews. Then one came up, file 413. The thumbnail loaded like molasses. When the full image appeared, I almost recoiled. It was the same face. Again, same look, same build, same quietly haunted stare. Only this time the file wasn't a decade old. It was stamped 3 days ago. Under patient notes, it read, "Subject is non-verbal but cooperative. No records found. Observation ongoing." Signed, Dr. Dorish. I stared at the signature. I knew that name. I'd searched for it before, but this time it was tied to an active patient file, not a legacy one. I clicked the staff directory again, still blank. Then I made a mistake. I tried to delete the photo. I told myself I was just testing something, that I'd restore it right after. But the system froze, and the screen went dark for a moment. When it came back, the image was gone. I closed everything and logged off. That night, I stayed late, trying to piece it all together. 6 paper files, 1 photo file, and now a physical sighting of the man I'd seen only in records. At 8:45 p.m., someone knocked on my office door. Not loud, just 3 soft taps. When I opened it, no one was there. But on my desk, where I'd left my notebook, there was a file folder I hadn't seen before. No patient name, just a number. 413 inside. There was a single page, blank except for a handwritten sentence. "You recognized me." The folder hadn't been there when I left for the bathroom. I checked the hallway, empty. No footsteps, no carts, nothing but the buzzing of old fluorescent lights and the distant hum of an elevator that never seemed to open. I took the folder home. I shouldn't have. I don't know what I thought I'd find. Fingerprints? An explanation. I just couldn't leave it sitting there in my office, out in the open. That night I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that face. Not angry or grotesque, just watching. Not waiting to be remembered, but simply acknowledging that it had already happened. By morning, I'd made a decision. I printed out every file I had copied. I took the hard copies of the older patient folders, scanned what I could, and made a chart: dates, names, arrival times, inconsistencies in physician logs. There were patterns. All of the patients with the same face were admitted on Tuesdays, all under observation for exactly 7 days, all discharged without recommendation or notation of follow-up care. Discharged to where? The system had no address. I went back to the hospital early, just before sunrise. My badge still worked. I avoided the main ward and headed straight to the back hallway that leads to Ward 4, the long-term unit. The quiet ward, the one no one ever seemed to enter unless they had to. The door required a separate key card, older magnetic strip style, but the night staff kept a spare in a drawer near the med station. I found it, swiped, the lock clicked. Ward 4 was darker than the others. No windows, no nurses visible. The rooms all had solid doors, not glass. I walked slowly past each one, peering through the observation slots. Empty dot occupied, but only with furniture, no movement. Then room 7. He was there, sitting in a chair, hands folded, just like before, but now he was looking directly at me, not surprised, not curious, almost patient. There was no name on the room chart, no notes, just a number, 413. I backed away. Something about his stare made me feel as if I were the one being evaluated, as if I were the one being watched through the mirror, recorded, documented. Then I saw something else, taped behind the glass window of the door, faint, water-damaged paper. I leaned closer. It was a photo, a blurry, low-res image of me sitting at my desk, reviewing files. I staggered back, my breath caught in my throat. Behind me, down the hall, the lights went out, and then a soft knock, 3 taps. The same rhythm. I turned around. No one. But when I looked back through the window into room 7, the chair was empty.